Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. So as you see in thumbnail, we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Daenerys tx Melisandre, part 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. The Hardhome survivors, led by Jon, Tormund, Toilet, and 1-1, approached the wall. Hardhome had not been as much of a disaster as one would think. Jon had been given enough time that he was able to get 40,000 freefolk out of Hardhome, including 25 giants and just as many woolly mammoths, not to mention about 4,000 dragonglass daggers out. 1. Then the walkers showed up before he could get the last 8,000 of 20,000 that wanted to come out. He killed a white walker with Longclaw and bared witness to the real threat, the Night's King, the leader and master of the White Walkers. Alistair looked down at the massive army of freefolk. Jon stepped forward. Alistair stared for a moment, considering just letting him stay out there and die. Alistair walked away, but not before saying, "Open the gates." Mind you, he didn't want to open the gates, but he followed the Lord Commander, for now. The lower gate was opened, and Jon led the freefolk through. The 40,000 freefolk from Hardhome were being escorted through Castle Black. Jon stood to one side while he watched them come through. Jon was solemn while he spoke to Sam. This almost turned into a failure. Sam said to Jon, "No Jon, it wasn't." Jon didn't look convinced as he eyed each of the free folk. "I managed to get 40,000 of them, including 25 giants and just as many mammoths, as well as 4,000 dragonglass daggers, but there was still 20,000 of them that I couldn't save." "Then why are you saying you failed them?" "You didn't fail him." Sam pointed to one, or him, or her. "Every one of them is alive because of you, and no one else." "I know that fact is not lost on them," Jon said. "I don't think the men of the Night's Watch appreciate it, though." His eyes traveled to and from many men of the Night's Watch glaring at Jon. Then Ollie, who exchanges a long look of hatred with Jon from the top of the stairs. Alistair walks down the steps to Jon. "You have a good heart, Jon Snow. It will get us all killed," Alistair said darkly. Jon gripped his shoulder and spun him around, anger shining in Jon's eyes as he said, "You weren't there at Hardhome, Thorn. You didn't see the tens of thousands of undead as they fell from the mountains as an avalanche. You didn't see the White Walkers. You didn't see the Night's King raise the 8,000 plus freefolk that did die, as more undead." Jon walked away as he said, "At least on this side of the wall, they can't be used as meat shields for his army." Castle Black. Library. Jon and Sam were both sharing meal together as Jon said while making a raising motion with his arms. He raised his hands, and they all stood up at once, 8,000 of them, a part of the biggest army in the world. "So what are you gonna do?" Sam asked. "I am gonna hope they don't learn how to climb the wall," Jon japed, and the two friends shared a laugh. "And the dragonglass?" Sam asked. "There's enough to arm the entire Night's Watch, and still have 3,000 more for the freefolk, but that still leaves everyone else. It's better than nothing, but it's still not enough," Jon said. "Well, that's some good news, but, you said you killed a White Walker," Sam asked. Jon sighed and said, "With Longclaw, I saw its ice blade shatter steel axes like they were glass, but Longclaw is made of Valyrian steel. How many Valyrian steel swords are left in the Seven Kingdoms?" Sam asked. "Between the dragonglass we have, and the Valyrian steel in Westeros, not nearly enough to make a difference." Jon sighed before saying, "I am the first Lord Commander in history to sacrifice the lives of sworn brothers to save the lives of free folk. How does it feel to be friends with the most hated man in Castle Black?" he said while smiling. "You were friends with me when I first got here, and I wasn't winning any elections back then," Sam smiled. Jon raised a glass and Sam did the same. "Here's to us then. Long may they sneer." Jon and Sam clink glasses and drink. Sam looks to Jon. "What?" Jon asked. "I wanted to ask you something. To ask something of you. Send me, Gilly, and the baby to Aldtown so I can become a maester. That's what I am meant to be, not this," Sam said. "I need you here, Sam. If you leave, who's left to give me advice I trust?" Jon said. "Well, there's Ed," Sam noted. Jon gives Sam a look, not truly convinced. "I'll be more use to you as a maester. More use to everyone now that Maester Aemon's gone. The Citadel has the world's greatest library. I'll learn about history, strategy, healing, and other things that will help when they come." Jon stares at Sam, saying nothing. This prompts Sam to continue. "If Gilly stays here then she'll die, and the baby that she named after me will die, and I'll end up dying, too, trying to protect them, which means that the last thing that I'll see in this world will be the look in her eyes when I fail them. I'd rather see 1,000 White Walkers than see that." Jon inhales, exhales, then nods somberly. Sam smiles. "Thank you," Sam said. "You know that the Citadel will make you swear off women, too," Jon mentioned. "They'll bloody try," Sam said, before stopping. John looks at Sam incredulously. Sam. John said. What? Sam said, looking guilty. Sam, John drawled. Sam smiles knowingly. John looked incredulous before saying, you had just been beaten half to death, how did you? Very carefully, Sam said. John smiles and lets out a small laugh. I am glad the end of the world's working out for someone. They sit in silence for a moment. I'll come back, Sam said. To your return, John said, which Sam repeated, to my return. A day later Sam, Gilly, and Lil Sam mounted their horse-drawn carriage. Sam looked up to see John watching from the top of his steps. They exchanged a goodbye wave, and then Sam began riding out of Castle Black to book a ship to Aldtown. Later John and Davos exit the elevator. He came to your aid, Stannis, now he needs you, Davos said. We don't have enough men to make any difference, besides, the Night's Watch takes no part in the affairs of the South, John stated. That was the standard response for anyone trying to sway the Night's Watch to aid them. The wildlings will make a difference, Davos snapped. The free folk will never fight for Stannis, I told you both this already, John snapped back. You saved their bloody lives. If they're going to live in the Seven Kingdoms, safe behind our wall, they ought to fight for the damn place, Davos argued. It's not their fucking fight. I didn't save them from certain death just so Stannis could send them off to die for his hopeless cause, John said in anger. The gates to Castle Black are opened and Melisandre arrives, alone and on horseback. John and Davos rush over to her. Stannis? John asked, wondering if he had been defeated. Melisandre gave no response aside from shaking her head and a dead look in her eyes. Shireen? The princess? Davos asked. Once again, Melisandre shook her head. The Red Woman then walks away from the two of them, to stir in her own misery. That very night the Lord Commander's office. John goes through the various scrolls on his desk. They were pretty much all saying the same thing, that they couldn't send more men. This pretty much a disaster. They had too few men as it was, and now they couldn't replace the numbers they had already lost. Ollie then entered the room. Lord Commander. Ollie shouted, looking excited, it's one of the wildlings you brought back, says he knows your Uncle Benjen, says he's still alive. John stands up very quickly, shock and hope present on his face. Are you sure he's talking about Benjen? Says he was first ranger, Ollie said he knows where to find him. John rushed out of his room and made his way out to the courtyard. He is met by Alliser. Man says he saw your uncle at Hardhome the last full moon, Sir Alliser informed John. He could be lying, John noted as he put some gloves on. Could be, Alliser admitted, there are ways to find out. Where is he? John asked. Alliser pointed to a group of huddled up brothers holding torches, over there. John walks past the group of brothers. Instead of a member free folk, he saw a sign that reads traitor when he passed them, and suddenly realizes he has been betrayed. The moment he turned around, his face contorted into a snarl. Alliser stabbed him in the gut with a knife. For the watch, Alliser said as he smiled condescendingly. Alliser stepped back and another brother stabs him. For the watch, the brother said. The brother stepped back and a third brother stabs him. For the watch, the brother said. A fourth brother stabs him. For the watch, the brother said. A fifth brother stabs him. For the watch, the brother said. Before this brother could pull out his dagger, John gripped the traitor's arm tightly. You're all fucking idiots. John snarled. You think the wall was built to keep out free folk? The wall built the wall to keep out the White Walkers and all the monsters north of it. You really think protecting you little powwow of murders, rapists, and thieves is more important than surviving the long night? You'll damn us all. The brother then stabbed him 3 more times. By this point, John could no longer stand. He fell to his knees and coughed up blood as the black brothers separate, letting someone else approach. John realized to his horror that it was Ollie, the boy he had taken under his wing. John could only look at Ollie in disbelief. He stared at the young boy, his eyes screaming to know why the boy would betray him. John had known that Ollie despised the free folk for what they did to his village and family, but he never thought that his decision to save them would affect the boy so much. Then again, this was the exact same kid that had torn his heart out a year ago by killing Ygritte. Even you, Ollie? John managed to get out. Ollie thrusts his knife into John's heart. For the watch, Ollie said coldly, unable to bear it any longer. John crumbled to the ground. His eyes stared at the night sky as the world blackened around him. As his life flashed around him, John realized that he would never learn who his mother was. He would die never seeing his family alive again. Well, at least I will be with them again, John thought. For some time now, a part of him had wanted to die. He had felt that way ever since he lost the only woman he had ever loved. When she was killed by Ollie, another part of him died. just like it did when he learned of the deaths of his father and Rob. His final thoughts drifted back to the cave, their cave, struggling for one final breath. Jon whispered her name one last time, Wygritte. Jon's eyes continued to stare at the moon, tears trailing down his eyes, but his eyes didn't see it, or anything else. As he took his final breath, the brothers walk away from him, the blood seeping from his wounds, spread throughout snow, staining it red, the blood forming a shape, the shape of a wolf. The cold winds of the north blow throughout the night, making the already unbearably cold location just seem more so. The high-pitched howls of Ghost could be heard through the winds, and as Jon's corpse lay in the snow, Ghost could sense the death of his master and pawed at the door where he was kept, whimpering in sadness. Davos, hearing all this, exits the room he's staying in to look outside. He sees Jon's body and rushes down the balcony and over to him, stopping just a few feet from him. Eventually, one of the brothers not part of the conspiracy walked outside since the howling had woken him up. It's coming from the courtyard, he said to his buddy. Ghost's howling continued as the two members came outside to see Jon's body. It's the Lord Commander. Ed and another Night's Watchman also see Jon. Davos says to them, help me get him inside. The direwolf's howling continues as three men as well as Ed and Davos line the room, all surrounding Jon Snow's corpse. Thorne did this, Ed said bitterly as he gazed with anger at the corpse of his best friend. Placing a hand over his wounds, he also closed Jon's eyes. How many of your brothers do you think you can trust? Davos asked. Trust? Ed scoffed before looking all around, the men in this room. Does the wolf know you? Davos asked while Ed nodded. We need all the help we can get. Ed didn't need to be told anymore as he went to go free the direwolf before Elizar's cunts tried to kill him as well. A knocking was heard as the door, causing everyone to draw swords. Sir Davos, said a woman whose voice Davos could never forget. They let her in and Ed exited to get Ghost. Melisandre looked at Jon solemnly, touching his face and said, I don't understand. I saw him in the flames fighting at Winterfell. I can't speak for the flames, but he's gone, Davos stated, the reality of the situation still difficult for even him to accept. The next morning, the mess hall, the remaining members of the Night's Watch were all gathered in the mess hall arguing amongst themselves, while Thorne, Bowen Marsh and Othel Yarwick sat at the high table. He was our Lord Commander. One brother shouted, he never should have been. Another shouted back. Alliser, having listened to this all morning, pounded the table, getting them all to shut up and focus on him. You all know why you're here. Jon Snow is dead, he informed them. The men murmured amongst themselves for a few moments before one brave soul asked the question that everyone was thinking, who killed him? Thorne's facial expression did not change as he announced, I did. The shouting resumes while Alliser continues and Bowen Marsh and Othel Yarwick and the other 8 officers in this castle. Oathbreakers. Murderers. Traitors. Alliser pounded the table again as he started a long speech. You're right. The shouting stops as he continues, we've committed treason, all of us. Jon Snow was my Lord Commander. I had no love for him. I never tried to make that a secret, but I never once disobeyed any of his orders. Loyalty is the foundation on which the Night's Watch is built, and the Watch means everything to me. It's all that I have left. I have given my life. We have all given our lives to the Night's Watch. Jon Snow was going to destroy the Night's Watch. He let tens of thousands of wildlings through our gates as no Lord Commander in our history has ever done before. He gave them the very land on which they reaved and raped and murdered for generations. Lord Commander Snow did what he thought was right. I've no doubt about that, and what he thought was right would have been the end of us. He thrust a terrible choice upon us, and we made it. Back in the building, Ghost was whimpering with tears in his blood-red eyes as he gently nudged his dead master's head, as if trying to make him wake up. It was almost as if the poor direwolf couldn't understand his lifelong companion was dead. Hell have seen we didn't come, Davos stated. Thorne will have made it official by now, Castle Black is his. I don't care who's sitting at the high table, Ed said. Jon was my friend, and those fuckers butchered him. Now we return the favor. We don't have the numbers, Davos said. We have a direwolf, Ed stated. It's not enough. I didn't know Lord Commander Snow for long, but I have to believe he wouldn't have wanted his friends to die for nothing, Davos said. If you were planning to see tomorrow, you picked the wrong room, countered. We all die today. I say we do our best to at least take Thorne with us when we go. We need to fight, but we don't need to die, not if we have help, Davos hinted. Who is gonna help us? Ed asked. You're not the only ones who owe your lives to Jon Snow, Davos stated. There's 40,000 of them sitting just outside Castle Black. Ed realized what he was getting at. He addressed one of the brothers, bolt the door, and don't let anyone in. I'll be back as soon as I can. He left to try to get Tormund's help. Winterfell Ramsay Bolton was sitting beside the bed that Miranda's corpse lay on. Maester Wolkan was standing in the doorway. She was 11 the first time I saw her, Ramsay said. The kennel master's daughter. She smelled of dog. I wasn't much older, but everybody was already afraid of me. You certainly were, Ramsay said to Maester Wolkan. Miranda wasn't, though. What could I do to her that those hounds couldn't? She was fearless. There was nothing she wouldn't do. Ramsay laid a hand on her cheek, gently stroking the dead flesh. Your pain will be paid for 1,000 times over, my love, Ramsay said, a lone tear trailing down his left cheek. I wish you could be here to watch. Shall I have a grave dug for her, my lord? Or would you rather the men build a pyre? Maester Wolkan asked. Buried, burned? This is good meat. Ramsay got up and walked out. Feed it to the hounds, causing Maester Wolkan to be a bit horrified. Later Bolton father and son were walking down the halls of Winterfell to the Great Hall, discussing the aftermath of the battle. Your command of the cavalry was impressive, thanks to you. The false king Stannis Baratheon is dead. Do you know who struck the killing blow? Roose asked. No, Ramsay answered. A shame, I'd reward the man. Still, a great victory. Do you feel like a victor? Roose asked coldly, causing Ramsay to look at him. I rebelled against the crown to arrange your marriage to Sansa Stark. Do you think that burning wagons in the night and mowing down tired, outnumbered Baratheons is the same as facing a prepared and provisioned Lannister army? Roose asked rhetorically. No, Ramsay said, a reckoning will come. Roose said as he tried to explain the Boltons, at best, shaky station as overlords of the North. We need the North to face it, the entire North. They want back us without Sansa Stark. We no longer have Sansa Stark. You played your games with her. You played your games with the heir to the Iron Islands and now they're both gone. I have a team of men after them with some of my best hounds. They won't get far, Ramsay said. I am glad to hear it, Roose said, but he sure didn't look happy. Without Sansa, you won't be able to produce an heir, and without an heir, well, let's hope the Maesters are right and Lady Valda's carrying a boy. Castle Blackthorn and several of his conspirators were outside the room that Jon's loyalists resided in. Sir Davos, we have no cause to fight, we are both anointed knights. Hear that, lads? Nothing to fear, Davos said sarcastically. I will grant amnesty to all brothers who throw down their arms before nightfall, and you, Sir Davos, I will allow you to travel south a free man with a fresh horse, Alliser said, though if one were to look outside, the conspirators had weapons drawn. And some mutton, Davos said jokingly. I'd like some mutton. What? Alliser dumbfoundedly asked. I am not much of a hunter, Davos explained. I'll need some food if I am gonna make it south without starving. Well, give you food, Alliser said hesitantly. You can bring the Red Woman with you if you like, or you can leave her here with us, whichever you choose, but surrender by nightfall or this ends with blood. Moment of silence follows before he hears. Thank you, Sir Alliser. We'll discuss amongst ourselves and come back to y'all with an answer. Alliser and the traitors walk away. Boys, I've been running from men like that all my life. In my learned opinion, we open that door and they'll slaughter us all. They want to come in, they're gonna come in, one brother said. Aye, but we don't need to make it easy for them, Davos said. Ed is our only chance, one brother said. It's a sad fucking statement if Dolorous Ed is our only chance, another brother said. There's always the Red Woman, Sir Davos said. What's one redhead gonna do against 40 armed men? The one brother said. Sir Davos looked at that brother and said, you haven't seen her do what I've seen her do. Castle Black Courtyard Night. The Night's Watch members allied to Thorne were poised with crossbows pointed at the room Davos and the other Night's Watch members faithful to Jon resided in. Thorne was outside the door to the room, accompanied by several others who are loyal to him. Inside the room, Jon's body remains on the table. Davos, the Faithfuls, and Ghost are all standing. It's time, Sir Davos, Alliser said. Open the door and the men inside can rejoin their brothers in peace. Well, even set the wolf free north of the wall where it belongs. Nobody needs to die tonight. Davos turned to address the Night's Watch faithfuls. I've never been much of a fighter, Davos announced to them. He picked up Longclaw and grasped its hilt. Apologies for what you're about to see. Davos unsheathed Longclaw. The faithfuls follow suit, drawing their own blades. Thorne hears this and turns to address a Night's Watchman. Break it down, he orders. The brother grasps the sledgehammer and starts slamming it against the door. Ghost began to growl and bark at the door. Davos and company ready themselves for their inevitable battle. After a number of swings, the Night's Watchman with the hammer breaks a hole in the door. A loud thudding can be heard somewhere behind Alliser and his crew. They turn to see what the noise is. The thudding is coming from one of the courtyard's main gates. At that moment, 1-1 breaks down the gate and 2,000 of the wildlings led by Tormund and Ed rush into the courtyard. The Night's Watch loyal to Alliser have bows drawn at the wildlings but do not fire, they back up slowly. Attack! Thorn shouts. Thorn draws his sword. One poor fool charged Tormund. Tormund parries his sword before slicing the Night's Watchman in the neck, killing him. The other Night's Watch members become too scared to retaliate, seeing as there are more than 1,000 of free folk. Fight! You fucking cowards! Alliser Throne shouts in frustration. One Night's Watchman on the balcony shoots 1-1 in the shoulder with a crossbow bolt. 1-1 turns to face the poor sap, then grabs him by the legs, pulling him out of the balcony, slams him against a wall, causing his head to explode. He then tosses the headless corpse to the ground in front of Thorn. The Night's Watch members allied to Thorn begin dropping their weaponry. Tormund and Ed approach Alliser, swords still drawn. Alliser looked at Ed with fury shining in his eyes as he said, "You fucking traitor. The only traitors here are the ones who shoved their knives into their Lord Commander's heart," Ed said. "For thousands of years the Night's Watch has held Castle Black against the wildlings," Thorn said. "Until you," Tormund mocked. Ollie shouts and charges at Tormund with his sword. Tormund grabs Ollie and disarms him, then tosses him to another man who restrains him. Two men take Thorn by the arms. "Throw them into the cells where they belong. We'll deal with them later," Ed says. The men drag Thorn, Ollie and the 10 Night's Watch betrayers away. Tormund, Ed and Davos entered the room where Jon's body was. They stared down at him and his wounds. "Took a lot of knives," Tormund remarked. "I'll have my men get the wood for a pyre ready." Tormund walked out after that. Winterfell Dining Hall Roose. Ramsay and Harrion Karstark were gathered at the dining table, talking. Ramsay and Harrion were standing, while Roose remained seated at the head of the table. "We came upon the bodies on our way here," Harrion Karstark, current Lord of Karhold, informed Roose. "Half a dozen men? Your best hunters? Really?" Roose drawled out at Ramsay. "They obviously had help," Ramsay defended. "I didn't think Lady Sansa killed them all by herself." Roose deadpanned before addressing Harrion Karstark. "Thank you for this report, Lord Karstark. We know where she's going. Her brother's at Castle Black," Ramsay said. "Ned Stark's last surviving son?" the Lord Karstark asked. "Jon Snow is a bastard, not a Stark," Roose viciously retorted. Ramsay gave Roose a look and said, "So was I, father. Your hold on the north will never be secure as long as someone with Stark blood can walk through that door," Harrion pointed out. "Castle Black isn't defended on the southern side, and the few men left are barely men at all, farm boys and thieves. With a small force we could storm the castle, kill Jon Snow," Ramsay proposed but was interrupted by his father. "Have you taken leave of your sense, boy? Murder the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch? You'd unite every house in the north against us," Roose incredulously retorted. It was an unspoken rule that unless the Lord Commander betrays the realm, the northern houses don't touch the Lord Commander. Ramsay had a so-what look on his face and said, "We don't need every house in the north. The Umbers, the Manderleys, and the Karstarks command more soldiers than all the other houses combined. With their support, none could challenge us. The Starks lost my house the day King Robb cut off my father's head," Harrion said bitterly. "It's time for new leadership in the north." Roose looked at both his son and Lord Karstark. He got up and stood in front of them. "If you acquire a reputation as a mad dog, you'll be treated as a mad dog, taken out back and slaughtered for pig feed." Maester Wolkan then enters the room. "My lords, Lady Valda has given birth, a boy, red-cheeked and healthy." "My congratulations, Lord Bolton," Lord Karstark said, as was customary of a vassal. Ramsay steps towards his father and they share a hug. "Congratulations, father. I look forward to meeting my new brother." He made it seem like he was actually interested. Roose clasped Ramsay's shoulder and looked him in the eye. "You'll always be my son." Ramsay actually seemed to be genuinely touched by the look in his eyes and the emotion in his voice. "Thank you for saying that, it means a great deal to me." Ramsay then smiled insanely and stabbed Roose in the guts 3 times with a dagger he had hidden in his sleeve. Roose fell to the ground, holding his one hand over his gushing wounds with the other trying to prop himself up. "Woo-hoo, that felt great. Not as good as when I killed Demeric, but still great," Ramsay said with insanity shining in his face and an insane smile on his face. "You?" Roose asked. Roose had often wondered who killed his firstborn son, yet he could never figure it out. "Of course it was me. Demeric had everything I wanted, including being the heir to House Bolton. So I poisoned him so I would be your only son," Ramsay says in anger. Roose shows anger on his face for the first and last time as blood spills from his mouth. "I should have killed you when your mother presented you to me, bastard." Ramsay smiled and said, "Yes, father, yes you should have." Roose succumbed to his wounds and died. Ramsay took a cloth from the table to clean his knife. Maester Wolken, send ravens to all the northern houses. Roose Bolton is dead, poisoned by our enemies, Ramsay ordered. The old fat maester did not immediately respond, staring down at Roose's corpse. Wolken. Ramsay shouted at the man, waking the man from his stupor. How did he die? Maester Wolken paused for a moment before saying with a fear-filled voice, poisoned by his enemies. In his fear, he forgot to address Ramsay as Lord. You're talking to your lord, use respect, Karstark ordered. Forgive me, my lord, Wolken begged, as he did not want to be Ramsay's next victim. Send for Lady Valda and the baby, Ramsay ordered. She needs resting, my lord. Wolken tried to protest, but Ramsay's annoyed glare shut him up. Wolken resigned the girl to her fate. There was nothing he could really do, not without losing his own life. At once, my lord, he left to go summon her. Ramsay stares down at Roose's body, smiling like a madman. He finally was the true master of his house now. An hour later, Winterfell courtyard. Ramsay was standing in the courtyard, waiting for Valda and her baby. Eventually, the fat woman came up to him, holding her son in her arms. Turned to her with a somewhat innocent smile. There he is, he said. Isn't he wonderful? Valda asked. Oblivious to what was about to happen to her, she shows Ramsay her son, nonetheless. May I hold him? He asks, feigning interest and care, as if he couldn't possibly want to just bash this baby's head in. Of course, she said. She held him out, and Ramsay held him. They, despite being newborn, had their father's pale eyes, making Ramsay any doubts about what he was going to do to the little babe. Have you named him yet? Ramsay asked, honestly curious. I named him Demeric, after Lord Bolton's last son, Valda said. Though Ramsay had no outward expression, inside he was furious. Yep, he's definitely going to die now. Still, had to keep up appearances, little brother, he said. Ramsay handed little Demeric back to Valda. Lord Bolton sent for us. Have you seen him? She asked. Poor girl, if she had been smarter, she wouldn't have met Ramsay all alone. Of course, follow me, mother, he said, and began leading her to the kennels. Ramsay and Valda walk inside. The dogs are all barking at Valda. Where is Lord Bolton? Valda asked, suddenly starting to get worried. Ramsay does not answer her as he walks toward the end of the kennels. The dogs bark even louder. Down. Ramsay commands his hounds, which they stop barking. The baby Demeric started crying. It's all right, come on, shish, Valda said. Ramsay starts opening the kennels. It's cold out here, Ramsay. I need to feed him, Valda tried to tell Ramsay. The man didn't listen as he opened the last kennel. Ramsay. Where is your father? Ramsay. Where is Lord Bolton? She pleaded. Ramsay turns around and faces Valda. I am the Lord of House Bolton now, bitch, Ramsay says with a smirk. The fat crying woman looks at her son, then back to him. Ramsay, please, I'll leave Winterfell. I'll go back to the Riverlands, Valda pleaded. But Ramsay didn't care. Please, Ramsay, he's your brother, Valda begged for what would be the final time. I preferred it when I was an only child, Ramsay said. Ramsay whistles at the dogs. They exit their pens and attack Valda and the baby Demeric. Valda screams as the hounds slowly tear her and her baby to shreds. Castle Black. Melisandre's chamber. Melisandre was sitting at the fireplace. She hears someone knock on the door. Come in. Davos opens the door and enter the room to see Melisandre sitting in front of the fireplace. I am sorry, my lady, I didn't mean to interrupt, Davos apologized. You interrupt nothing, she said solemnly. Davos looks at the fireplace and then at Melisandre. She looked so pitiful right now, wallowing in her own self-pity. I assume you know why I am here, Davos stated. I will after you tell me, she said, not turning to face him. It's about the Lord Commander, Davos said. The former Lord Commander, Melisandre corrected. Does he have to be? Davos asked, hinting at what he really wanted. Melisandre looks at Davos. What are you asking? She asked. Do you know of any magic that could help him? Bring him back to life? Davos asked. He didn't like the idea of disturbing the dead, but Jon was their best chance at surviving the long night. He understood the White Walkers better than anybody else, and Davos had learned years ago that Melisandre was capable of things that defy all common sense. If you want to help him, leave him be, Melisandre dismissed. Can it be done? Davos asked desperately. There are some with this power, Melisandre admitted. How? Davos pressed. I don't know, she admitted. Have you seen it done? Davos asked. Melisandre pondered for a moment before saying, I met a man who came back from the dead, but the priest who did it should have been possible. But it could be now, Davos said. Not for me, she said in despair. She stands and walks away from her chair. Davos walks towards her. Not for you. I saw you drink poison that should have killed you. I saw you give birth to a demon made of shadows, Davos stated. Everything I believed, the great victory I saw in the flames, all of it was a lie, Melisandre said brokenly. She looks at Davos and said, you were right all along, the Lord never spoke to me. Fuck him. Then, fuck all of them. I am not a devout man, obviously. 7 gods, drowned gods, tree gods, it's all the same. Davos comes a step closer to the Red Woman. I am not asking the Lord of Light for help. I am asking the woman who showed me that miracles exist. I don't have this power, she whispered. Have you ever even tried? Davos asked. To which Melisandre couldn't answer, because the truth is, she never had tried. A few minutes later Davos, Tormund, Ed, and Melisandre were gathered around Jon's body. Ghost was sleeping on the floor. The Red Woman was performing her ritual. She wrings out a wet cloth with which she cleans out the Jon's stab wounds. She cuts some his hair and beard and throws those hairs into a brazier. Then she places her hands on Jon's chest and utters a series of incantations in High Valyrian. Please, Melisandre eventually begged her god. After several more moments of nothing happening, Melisandre lets her hands down slowly. She has tears in her eyes and looks to Davos. Tormund scoffs and exits, followed by Melisandre and Ed. Davos lingers and stares at Jon's body, but eventually exits. The next day the remaining men of the Night's Watch, excluding those 12 conspirators, Davos, Melisandre, Ghost, and the elders and leaders of the Freefolk were gathered at the weirwood tree that the Night's Watch says their oaths to pay their final respects to Jon. We are gathered here today before the old gods to pay our final respects to Jon Snow. 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Ed began since he was basically de facto leader of the Watch until another election could be held. Jon and I didn't get along when we first met. See, for those of you who don't know, Jon Snow was born out of wedlock, so despite being Ned Stark's son, he was considered illegitimate. While he grew up with his half-siblings, certain people like Lady Stark would go out of their way to make him feel unwanted, even when he was just a kid. This eventually drove him to join the Night's Watch, because he had heard how your birth doesn't matter when you're one of the brothers. He came off as arrogant when we first met. He spent most of his life holding back. So he was eager to show how good he was. Me, Gren. And Pip almost slit his throat for it. I am glad we didn't. Ed chuckled. Jon was a great man. He was the leader we turned to when the night was darkest. Jon was only one among us brothers willing to make the truly hard choices that nobody else wanted to make or could make. Not Mormont, not Thorne. Jon. He didn't deserve to be stabbed in the back by his own men, simply for doing everything to ensure humanity's survival. And now his watch had ended. May you rest in peace, old friend. We'll probably be joining you soon enough. With his piece done, Ed threw the torch onto the fire and everyone present watched as the pyre slowly started burning. Within a few minutes the entire pyre was burning. They all stood vigil with solemn expression on their faces. What's that? One of the elders said, pointing at the heart tree. Everyone present turned to see what this elder was pointing at. The eyes of the face on the weirwood were glowing a very eerie purple. It's not supposed to do that, right? One of the elders asked. Everyone turned back to Jon's body and everyone realized something. His body wasn't burning. Even in the flames, the members gathered could see the color return to his dead flesh, as his clothes had been mostly burned to ash, though only Ghost could hear it, his once dead master's heartbeat for the first time since his death, causing the direwolf to howl in delight. Thump thump, the 8 stab wounds all over Jon's abdomen and the one in the center of his chest, closed themselves, showing only scars. Thump thump, his beard burned off as his chest expanded and contracted, filling his lungs with air again. Thump thump, his black hair turned such a pale color, that it actually looked as white as snow. It also shortened and changed shape, becoming spiky. Thump thump, his hands clenched into fists as his eyes squinted, struggling to open. Thump thump, finally, Jon's eyes snapped open. Instead of his original stark gray eyes, his irises were now a vibrant shade of royal purple with black sclera. Thump thump, the dragon had finally awoken. What is this? Was Jon's first thought as he looked at himself. The last thing he remembered was bleeding out in the snow as he stared up at the moon and whispered the name of the woman he loved. He stared at his pale dead flesh and tried to feel his heartbeat, only to feel none. I am dead. Then, he thought to himself, so why am I in Dorne? Jon looked around only to see riders approaching. One of them, despite being younger, was still recognizable to Jon. Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, Lord of Winterfell, had a grim expression on his face as he arrived at the Tower of Joy, with 5 other men. Behind him, his eyes hardened, as he eyed the 2 remaining knights in white standing guard at the entrance to the tower. Dismounting, he approached them. Jon looked at the 2 Kingsguard and thought, this must be Esser Arthur and Esser Gerald Hightower. his widened in realization as they walked past him. Am I seeing a vision of the past? Sir Arthur Dane looked between each of the men before giving Eddard a respectful nod. Lord Stark. I looked for you on the Trident, he called out to the knights. We weren't there. Arthur Dane answered. Your friend, the usurper, would lie beneath the ground if we had been, Lord Commander Gerald Hightower added. The Mad King is dead. Rhaegar is the one who lies beneath the ground now. Why weren't you there to protect your prince? Kingsguard stay with the king, Arthur said. What? Jon thought in shock. Are they insinuating that Rhaegar had another legitimate son besides Aegon? Eddard looked at the tower again and then at the two Kingsguard. Where's my sister, Arthur? The Sword of the Morning steeled his resolve and said, I wish you good fortune in the wars to come, Lord Stark. Both Gerald and him donned their helmets. And now it begins, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning announced. Gerald drew his sword, and Arthur drew Dawn and a simple longsword, holding Dawn in his left and the longsword in his right. By the old gods, am I really about to see this with my own eyes? Jon thought, watching the entire scene with anticipation. No, Eddard said with sadness in his voice. Now it ends. Eddard and his men drew their weapons. Lord Howland Reed attempted to rush Sir Arthur with a single-handed overhead strike, but Sir Arthur parried his strike with Dawn, and fluently sliced open Howland's stomach with his ancestral sword, causing him to shout in pain and fall to the ground, taking him out of the fight, as Eddard attacked Arthur, stabbing and slashing with his longsword, but Arthur parried each of his attempts while backing up. Lord William Dustin was engaging Gerald Hightower, who had already dispatched Ethan Glover. Lord Dustin parried away Gerald Hightower's slash while pivoting. He bashed his shield, which held the Stark insignia on it, at Sir Gerald, but Gerald had taken a step back, causing the shield bash to miss, while he forced it away with his hand, putting William Dustin off balance. William attempted to regain his footing and slash at Gerald, but the Lord Commander of Aerys Targaryen's Kingsguard roared as he plunged his sword through William Dustin's chest, causing him to die. Gerald then proceeded to remove Lord Dustin's body from his sword. Ned swung his parried strike around for an overhead strike. Only to be parried away by Dawn, he went for a thrust. Only to be parried away by Arthur Longsword, he stabbed again only to be parried away by Arthur's twirling dual-wield style. And Ned had to pivot to regain his position in order to block Arthur's dual sword strike, which sent Ned stumbling away. Sir Gerald attempted to attack Ned while he wasn't prepared, but Ned parried away the strike and fluidly plunged his sword into Sir Gerald's neck, the point coming out the back of his throat. A bit of blood spurted from his wounds as the Lord of Winterfell pulled his sword out, letting the life fade from the White Bull's eyes. Theo Wull, Sir Mark Ryswell, Martin Castle and Ned Stark encircled and surrounded Arthur Dane. Like a pack of wolves stalking a nice juicy meal, but Arthur was no prey. As he twirled around his swords a bit before they engaged him. Arthur's mastery of the dual-wield style was on full display as he parried away two strikes, one from Theo and one from Castle, before pivoting and kneeling to block two strikes from Ned and Mark. It went on like this for several moments as they would try to overwhelm him with multiple strikes, a good strategy, and had he only been using one sword, they would have eventually overwhelmed him. But Arthur trained to handle any sort of situation and his dual-wield style was perfect for this. After several moments, an opening was created in the Northman four-direction assault. Arthur was now outside of their box they had made for him. And while the Northerns were still attacking at least two at a time. They were in a neat little line. They tried to encircle him again, but the master swordsman wouldn't have that happen again. Spinning Dawn and his longsword in his hands, he delivered a swift kick to Mark Ryswell, causing him to fall down. Mark attempted to get back up, but his neck was exposed for a moment, which was all the Sword of the Morning needed, as he swiftly pivoted and delivered a masterful slash, which parted Mark Ryswell's jugular vein, killing him instantly. Arthur was as good as the stories say. I certainly don't know if I could have pulled that off, Jon thought. Theo Wull, Mary T.N. Castle, and Ned tried to overwhelm him. But the Arthur kept parrying away their strikes, wasting not a single drop of energy in his movements. Within a few moments, he had kicked away Martin Castle's shield, causing him to stumble away, allowing Arthur to parry two strikes from Ned Stark and Theo Wull. He then turned his attention to Martin Castle. He used both sword and Martin attempted to block attack with his one sword, but Martin's sword pushed over to Martin's shoulder, allowing Arthur to open the castle's neck, while Ned could only watch. Theo and Ned attacked but the two of them couldn't hold the great swordsman off for long. Arthur parried and knocked Ned away, while Theo Wull attacked with an overhead that was blocked by Arthur's longsword while simultaneously plunging Dawn through his heart. Arthur pulled his family's ancestral blade out while he twirled his sword around in order to relieve any tension in the wrists encircling Ned. The stories all say the same thing, that Ned Stark was able to kill Arthur Dayne, but how? When Arthur is leagues above my father. They hardened each of their faces before Ned opened with a slash, but Arthur parried and went on the attack, without any other opponents to worry about. He went on the attack, forcing Ned to back up with every strike. They went back and forth like this several times, where one would be forced on defense, then they would turn it around and go on the attack. He really is good, Arthur thought as he disarmed Ned and poised Dawn to finish him off, but this ends now. But it was not to be. Jon saw Howland Reed silently approach Sir Arthur from behind and stab him through his exposed neck with his dagger. Within a few seconds, Arthur no longer had the strength to stand or even hold Dawn as blood spurted from his neck. Eddard quickly got over his shock and grabbed Dawn, posing himself to put an end to Sir Arthur. Arthur looked up at him, a blank expression on his face, as if he regretted nothing at all, and Ned sliced his head completely off, killing Sir Arthur instantly. He stabbed him in the back. Jon thought with shock, no wonder my father never told the truth, he didn't want Arthur's memory to be tarnished. Staggering back, and resting on his sword, Eddard turned to Howland. I owe you my life, Howland. Howland simply smiled. There are no debts between friends. Before Eddard could insist, a scream from a woman caught the attention of them both. Go. Howland insisted, I'll handle things here. Needing no further push, Eddard ran up to the tower. As the Northern Lord took care of the bodies, as he ran, another scream echoed through the tower. Jon followed him. Upon reaching the top, Eddard burst into a room, where he saw a bedridden woman holding a boy a little over a year old. With them were two other women, handmaidens Eddard supposed. Ned. The woman whispered, Lyanna. Eddard called out. He placed his sword at the foot of the bed and knelt beside his sister. Lyanna Stark looked to the side slightly, as she met the eyes of her brother. So that's my Aunt Lyanna, Jon thought. Is that you? She whispered, is that really you? I am not dreaming? Eddard held on to both of Lyanna's hands with one of his own, while the other stroked the side of her head. No, you are not dreaming, sister, he replied with a sad smile. I am here, right here. I've missed you, big brother, Lyanna said, as her body seemed to sag. I've got you, Leah. It's okay now, we can go home. Oh, Ned. How I wish I could. I can't, Ned. I don't know what's wrong, but my time is near. She coughed before uncurling around the child she held. I am sorry, Ned. I hated Robert and didn't want to marry him. I fell in love with Rhaegar and we got father's permission to marry. We were going to announce it to the realm, but Brandon and father were killed before we could. Take him, Ned, promise me, you'll take care of him, she gasped, clutching at her brother's tunic. Eddard gazed at his nephew, taking in his appearance. He looked to be older than his son Robb, by a year or so. He had tufts of black hair, as dark as Robert's. Eddard also noted that his nephew had stark gray eyes. Much to his surprise, however, the babe was silent throughout all this. His name is Naruto Targaryen, Lyanna continued, her breaths growing shallower. He's mine and Rhaegar's son and heir. Promise me you'll raise him to be a good man, Ned. Promise me. Lyanna, I promise. Please hold on. Well, get you a healer. Stay with me, please. Eddard cried out, all but begging. Eddard gently picked up his nephew, who started crying, as if realizing his mother's passing. Easy, little pup, all will be well. You have the blood of the wolf, like your mother, yet you are a dragon, like your father. I will protect you, lil one, no matter what the cost. Little Jon, he gentled whispered, trying to soothe the boy. What? Jon thought in utter shock whilst both hands gripped his head. This can't be right. I am a bastard, not a Targaryen. I can't be a Targaryen. My mother was just some unimportant tavern slut. My father was Ned Stark. How could I possibly have been a Targaryen the entire time? For whatever reason, Jon looked at the mirror in the room, as if hoping to see his old looks. To his dismay, he saw his face, but with silver blonde hair that was so pale it looked white, vibrant royal purple eyes, clean-shaven face, and black sclera. No, Jon thought desperately. No, no, no. Jon shouted and in his despair, punched the glass so hard that it cracked. Apparently, in the past, the glass in the mirror cracked as well, causing Ned to look at the cracked mirror, then look around the room, but seeing nothing, left to meet up with Howland. Jon, on the other hand, fell to his knees with his eyes closed, clutching his head as if desperately trying to find some way that this wasn't true, that what he had been told his whole life was still true, that his entire life hadn't been a lie. Yet as his eyes opened, he came upon another scene. Two people were saying their wedding vows in front of a weirwood, while another woman and a small child were watching. He recognized Lyanna from the previous scene. The silver-haired man must have been Rhaegar. So who are the two Dornish folk? Then he realized it must have been Elia and the little girl must be Rhaenys. The scene changed yet again. Jon was back in the weird tower in Dorne, where Ned Stark slew Arthur Dayne. He walked back into the tower only to see Rhaegar and a pregnant Lyanna lying in bed together. Rhaegar was lying on his side, his head propped up with one hand while the other lovingly caressed Lyanna's pregnant belly. "My love," Lyanna said, "have you thought about what we are going to him?" "Him?" Rhaegar asked, but there was a certain playfulness to his tone. "You're convinced it's a boy?" "Motherly instincts," Lyanna playfully retorted. "You're convinced he's a girl." "Can't help it, considering I already have a Rhaenys and Aegon. It's natural I would want Visenya as well." "Fine," Lyanna relented. "If I am wrong and he's a girl, you can have your Visenya, but if he's a boy, I think I want to name him Naruto." "Naruto?" Rhaegar asked. "After the man who started my family's line back in the Freehold?" "Yes," Lyanna said. "I had thought of Jon, after one of the old Stark kings, but our son will be a dragon prince. He needs a name fit for one." Rhaegar cupped his wife's face and looked her in the eyes with love and adoration. "No matter if he's a Naruto or Visenya, I will love our child, and all the children we will have together, my little wolf." Their following kiss was both loving and tender. Jon covered his mouth with his hand as his breathing became haggard and tears rolled down his cheeks. His parents had loved each other, they had loved him, he had been loved. But scene shifted one final time. He was back in Castle Black, but it was a long time ago. The Lord Commander, who had long straight silver hair, was missing his left eye, while the other one had a blood-red iris. The master in the room was none other than Maester Aemon Targaryen, back when he could still see. "Why are you leaving Blackfyre with me, Uncle Brynden?" Aemon asked. Jon realized it. The Lord Commander was Brynden Rivers or Bloodraven, the man who killed Demon Blackfyre. "I can't take it with me on this ranging, Aemon," he said. "But why, Uncle?" Aemon asked, confused. "Because I won't be coming back from this ranging," Brynden said. "I am going after the Night's King. It matters not whether I succeed or fail, I won't make it back." Brynden bit his finger, drawing blood, and wiped it over a section of wall, causing that section to reveal a hidden compartment, with another sword, a crown, a suit of armor, and a chest with stuff in it that Jon for some reason could not make out. Just as Daena Targaryen foresaw the doom, "I have foreseen the coming of the Redeemer. He will be born when our house has been brought to its knees. If I fail, he will be the only one with any hope of ending the threat of the Walkers forever, and redeeming our house and restoring the Targaryens to their rightful place as not only kings but as dragon riders. I leave all this for him so that when the time comes, he will have all the tools he needs to succeed." Jon was overcome with emotion, but at the same time he felt hopeless. What could he do now? He was dead. "It's a burden, isn't it? Being the hero, I mean," Jon heard from behind him. He turned sharply behind him, expecting an enemy, only to see a pillar of flame that was twice as large and 5 times wider than Jon. The visage of a male figure made of flames appeared, though his eyes and mouth were completely white. Jon could not make out the features of this man. "I don't know how many times I've been called upon by the old gods to save a civilization, lead a kingdom into a better future, or save the world." 9. 12? I've lost count. Being the child of prophecy is such a burden. "Who are you?" Jon asked warily. "I've been called many names in my life, my descendant, Brydenblood Raven Rivers, Jaehaerys the Wise, Aegon the Conqueror, Naruto Targaryen the Progenitor, Valerius the Firebringer. Hell, my most infamous one is probably Azor Ahai, but I've always been nostalgic for my original name, Naruto Uzumaki." It was then that the shadows disappeared and Jon truly got a glimpse of Naruto. Spiky blonde hair with blue eyes, wicker marks and a tan complexion walked out of the flames, his lip curled in a smirk. He wore a black long-sleeved undershirt underneath bronze armguards and a bronze breastplate that had ab definition to it. A Spartan helmet with a red horsetail plume was held at his sword, bronze greaves worn over black breeches and black boots, a sword at his hip. "You certainly handle meeting me better than Melisandre would have. Those red priests would prostrate themselves at my feet if they met me in this form," Naruto said. "You are." Jon was stunned. "Naruto Uzumaki, as I was known in my first life, though in my second life, I was Azor Ahai, the man who first defeated the White Walkers. Why are they still alive? Why didn't you finish the job? Do you know how many people killed, what they plan to do?" Jon demanded. "Of course I know," Naruto said back with bite. "If I had what I needed back then, they would all already be dead. There was just one problem. I couldn't kill the Night King. To understand what I am getting at, you need to understand something. 8,000 years ago, I came to and united all of Westeros under my banner and fought a 20-year war to end the White Walkers. You know that particular event is the Long Night. We exterminated all the Whites and White Walkers, but during the final battle, I faced down the Night's King and I nearly killed him, but there was one problem. My blade could not kill him. Why? John asked. Because he had grown too powerful. By that point, a mere dragonglass dagger, or even a sword enchanted and infused with fire and blood magic could not slay him. I realized that the weapon I needed to kill him had not been invented yet. A blade forged in the flames of a dragon. Valyrian steel, Naruto explained. So, I sacrificed myself, going out in a massive explosion of sunlight to destroy his body and leave him incapable of reforming for 2 millennia. What are you doing? John asked as Naruto's appearance shifted. He now looked like a middle-aged man with silver hair and purple eyes, wearing shepherd's clothes and a staff. Don't mind this. This is part of the story, Naruto dismissed. Where was I? Oh yeah. So next time, I was reborn in the plains of Valyria. My name in this form was called Valerius, some 6,000 years ago. I found dragon eggs and figured out how to hatch and control them. I founded the Valyrian Freehold and developed the magics that they used for almost 6,000 years. Before I died in this form, I went beyond the wall, and found the Night's King, reforming in a cave. Being that he was alone and I was too old and on my last legs, I used powerful sealing magic that was tied to the existence of the Freehold itself. I made sure the bastard would be sealed away in the cave as long as Valyria existed. Naruto's form shifted again, to reveal Naruto's Uzumaki look, except his spiky hair was silver blonde, hid blue eyes a vibrant shade of purple, and he wore a pitch black toga. The next time I was born was as Naruto Targaryen, 730 years ago. I started House Targaryen as a noble house, built Dragonstone with my wife, and fought in the Second Spice War in 700 AC, and was part of the 300 dragon riders that destroyed the Rhoynish people. 400 years ago, the Doom came. One of those idiots in the Freehold sold Brightroar to the Lannisters and used that money to hire assassins to kill off their political rivals. The problem was those same rivals comprised the core group whose spells kept the 14 flames from erupting. When they died, those giant volcanoes erupted and destroyed the Freehold, causing the seals keeping the Night's King contained to fail. With the seals now gone, the little bastard could begin building his army again to destroy all life in the world. I was born again as Aegon Targaryen, Naruto said as his appearance changed again. He truly looked like portraits of the conqueror, tall, broad-shouldered and powerful in appearance, with purple eyes and short-cut silver-gold hair. He wore Aegon's armor of black scales and his hand rested on Blackfire. His crown was a simple circlet of Valyrian steel, set with big square-cut rubies. Realizing in my absence that the Night's King had started building his army again, I made plans to take him out. I conquered Westeros, and my plan was initially to conquer Dorne relatively quickly, then go north and kill him while his army was weak, but I hit a snag when my wife, Rhaenys, died in the war. It took me a long time to get over losing somebody that I had loved, and by the time I was ready to face the Night's King again, I suffered a stroke and died, leaving my weak and feeble son Aenys to take over. I was reborn right after my death as Aegon as Jaehaerys the Wise. Naruto's appearance changed again to match the old king. Jaehaerys had the purple eyes and silver hair of the Targaryens. He looked wise and dignified even into his old age, with a long white flowing beard reaching to his waist. Even at an old age, Jaehaerys still stood tall and upright. He was dressed in flowing robes of black and gold and wore as a crown a simple band of yellow gold ornamented with 7 gems of different colors, which each stone represented each of the 7 kingdoms. The old god spoke to me and told me that it was not yet time to kill him. After they explained why it was not time to kill him, I established an era of peace in the 7 kingdoms and stabilized the Targaryen rule. Several generations of men and women grew up, never knowing what conflict even was. I helped bring to life as many dragons as possible, because I knew we would need them. House Targaryen's power was nearing its zenith around the time of my death. When I died, I left my kingdom to the man that I knew would continue to keep the peace. I planned to be reborn one more time, and take out the Night King, with an army of dragons, an unchallenged power in House Targaryen and a united Westeros behind me. The old king looked solemnly as his face was filled with regret. It was unfortunate then, that my heir's stubbornness and his refusal to change the succession to his son caused the downfall of nearly everything I had built across 2 lives. The Dance of Dragons crippled House Targaryen. Almost all the members of my house were dead, most of the dragons gone, and the few that remained slowly died, though. The true reason for that war and the death of the remaining dragons goes deeper than most realize, but that's not a detail you need to know. I came back again as Brynden Rivers, also called Bloodraven. Naruto's appearance changed again, this time, to 25-year-old man with long, straight white hair that rested on his shoulders, a cut-out left eye with his right one being blood red. Like the color of weirwood sap, a 3-eyed crow rested on his shoulder. He bore a wine-stained birthmark on his right cheek and neck that looked like a raven. Dark Sister was sheathed at his waist and he held a weirwood bow in his hand. His face was a bit gaunt but he had a lean and fit body. He was dressed in light armor with his personal sigil emblazoned upon his tunic. A white dragon with red eyes and claws, breathing red fire on a black field. As you know, I was born to Aegon the Unworthy and my mother, Melissa Blackwood, when my mother was dismissed from court. I went with her back to Raventree Hall. I learned much about my Blackwood family and the magic of the First Men, like warging, greensight, and control over the elements of winter. When I eventually went back to court, I studied the Targaryen magic concerning dragon hatching and taming. Though I could not hatch dragons in this body, I was at least able to utilize fire magic, and I became a spymaster as well as skilled with a longsword and bow and arrow. When Queen Nerys was on her deathbed, I comforted her with kind words, as she had always been kind to me at court. It was then she revealed her darkest secret. Knowing that I would keep it a secret, Daeron the Good was Aemon the Dragon Knight's son. What? Jon Snow asked in shock. That's right, Jon, Cersei and Jaime Lannister are a modern-day Queen Nerys and Aemon the Dragon Knight. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, I had considered killing Daeron but I realized that would not be a good idea, because in a dragon dream, I realized that the prince that was promised, the body that I would one day inhabit to kill the Night King, would be born of his and Mariah Martell's line, so I let it be. I kept my eye on Aeger and Aemon, though, Aeger I hated. Not for something so stupid as him being a Bracken and my being a Blackwood, but because he lusted after Shiera, the only woman I loved in this life. He waved his hand and an image appeared in the air. Jon truly understood why Brynden fell for her. With long Targaryen silver gold hair, and a heart-shaped face, although she had two mismatched eyes, one blue, the other green, this so-called defect seemed to only make her more beautiful. Jon thought Cersei was the most beautiful woman he ever saw when she came to Winterfell, but Shiera's beauty was exponentially greater. Her beauty could almost be considered divine. Think Kate Upton for appearance. Shiera was a great reader, even at an early age, spoke numerous languages, and maintained a large and arcane library. She shared her mother's skill in the magic. Her beauty was such that she had many offers, both of marriage and to be her lover. Over the years, duels were fought over the right to sit beside her. Men killed themselves after falling from her favor. Poets outdid each other writing songs about her beauty. But she had eyes only for me. I was only one that interested her. I was only who could match her in wits, cunning, and knowledge of the arcane arts. But stories about her say she took many lovers, Jon mentioned, having remembered reading that somewhere. That's a lie told by jealous maesters. She may have flirted to make me jealous, but it was to make our rumbles in bed more interesting. She did it out of fun. Naruto smiled as he continued. Aeger I hated, but I got along rather well with Daemon. He was good man to have as a friend and we were good brothers to each other. He even helped me polish my swordsmanship. I honestly prayed that he wouldn't rebel. 10 years into Daeron's reign, Bittersteel convinced Daemon to rebel and claim the Iron Throne. He found our father's journal, which mentioned several times about Daeron being the Dragon Knight's son. Daemon finally rebelled and I convinced Daeron to send troops to stop him before a civil war could begin, but the men failed, so with heavy heart, because I knew that if Daemon overthrew the Targaryens it mean the prince that was promised would never be born, I threw away my morals. I killed the brother I loved and his 2 eldest sons with a hail of arrows at the Redgrass field. I served as hand of the king and spymaster to both Aerys I and Maekar I. I was too focused on finishing off the Blackfyres and preparing for my eventual showdown with the Night's King, that my attention was too split, and for that, I let the realm suffer as a result. I stopped the second Blackfyre rebellion by myself, helped bring the third to close by capturing Aeger and killing Haegon. I planned to have Aeger publicly executed, which would have been the end of them, had Aerys not been a fool and not given him a chance to escape by sending him to the wall. I killed Aenys Blackfyre when the Great Council that saw Egg take the throne occurred, and I was making plans to put Aeger and the rest down, so I could focus on preparing the realm for the White Walkers, but I was arrested by Aegon V. Aegon believed that if I continued to do the things that I had done, no one would ever trust the government again. He was right, of course, so I conceded and went to the wall. In 252 AL, I went beyond the wall with 100 of my most trusted rangers and laid a trap for my ancient enemy, knowing that he would come, and I almost had him. The scene around them showed Brynden dueling the Night's King on top of a snowy cliff. Why would you go north? You would think he would have sent whites after you, Jon said. He could have, Naruto said as the scene changed to show an army of whites that the Night King had, but he hated me, having kept him at bay for so long. He wanted to personally finish me off himself, so he came at me with all 500 White Walkers. Jon saw as Brynden and his 100 men began shooting dragon glass arrows at the undead monsters with extreme precision. Each arrow found a target, destroying White Walkers. The battle continued until the White Walkers and Brynden's men were all dead except for 2, while Brynden and the Night's King dueled it out. Eventually, Brynden found an opening and sliced open the Night King's stomach, causing the thing to shriek in agony. The undead monster quickly recovered and followed up with a flurry of attacks that Brynden blocked. Brynden ducked under a wild sweep and cut off the Night King's arm, which disintegrated to particles as it roared. Brynden sliced its left eye open and kicked the first walker down to the ground. He poised his sword to stab and end it all. "I meant to end him," Brynden said as the image showed him about to stab the Night's King in the heart. Jon watched with anticipation as Brynden began stabbing the sword downward. Only to stop when a White Walker spear that had been thrown cut through his right hip, causing Brynden to yell in pain as he dropped to the ground. A ways away, the last of the Night King's White Walkers had thrown his spear at Brynden to save its master. That same White Walker was promptly stabbed with a dragonglass dagger, turning to ice and dust as the last of Brynden's men died from his wounds. The Night King growled as he lifted Brynden up by the neck and held him dangling over edge of the cliff. He looked down as he was being choked by the monster. If he fell now he would hopefully die from the fall and warg into some animal so he could carry Dark Sister back to Aemon. Brynden used the last of his strength to chop off the other arm of the Night King, who roared as he lost his other arm. Brynden fell 1,000 feet before he hit the ground in a loud thud. "The fall should have killed me," he said. Jon saw several small green-colored children crawl out nowhere and pull him away with his sword. Jon looked at Brynden, puzzled. "The children of the forest, the last few that remain, they saved me, unfortunately." "Why do you say that?" Jon asked, wondering where the animosity came from. "Let me show you," Brynden said as he waved his hand and scene changed. He saw green grass flowing in the wind, he saw the setting sun, he saw small humanoid creatures with gray skin and slit eyes like a cat's. He saw them crowded around a weirwood, so he walked closer to see what they were fussing about. He walked around to see a man tied to the weirwood with his mouth gagged. "What the hell am I watching?" "The reason why I despise the children," Brynden said with anger. The leader of the pack brought out a dragonglass dagger as the pack slowly approached him. They were chanting some queer incantation that Jon could not understand. Once that was finished, the child slowly pushed the dagger into the man's chest. As Jon walked closer to get a better look, the man raised his head as his eyes turned blue. "White Walker blue. This must have been the first White Walker," Jon said. "No, Jon," Brynden said as the new walker's skin changed to blue, his hair fell out, and horns appeared on his head. "This is the Night's King, he was human once." "Why would the children create those monsters?" Jon wondered. They were at war with the First Men. The First Men eventually beat them back, so in their desperation to protect nature, they played God and created monsters. Monsters that they had no way of controlling. It's one thing to be desperate, it's another to play God. "You really do hate them," Jon realized. "They created the very reason that has prevented me from resting peacefully in the afterlife with my family. After being reincarnated 5 times in 8,000 years to deal with the same problem, it's going to eventually get on my nerves, and when they saved me, they imprisoned me in that damn heart tree, which stopped me from reincarnating." The scene changed again to a cave. The 3 children of the forest left in the world were gathered around a tree. Brynden was fused to the tree. His skin was white and wrinkled, his muscles were gone, only bony limbs remaining. His face was extremely gaunt, he was covered in tattered rags, he had vines wrapped around him, there was even roots sticking out of his eyeless socket. "Those idiots stopped me from reincarnating into what was meant to be my final body," Naruto said, but this time, his form changed again, and Jon suddenly found himself look at himself. "Your body was created for me to inhabit, Jon, but thanks to those genocidal tree huggers, I was prevented from doing so, and now thanks to them, humanity is on the brink of extinction. You're dead, and this is the only chance I will get to get a hold of my body." "You want my body," Jon stated. "It was meant for me, it belongs to me," Naruto said. "Make no mistake, Jon, though I would prefer you gave it up willingly, I will take that body by force if you make me." Naruto adopted a more solemn expression and placed his hand on Jon's shoulder and said, "You've been fighting ever since you left your home in Winterfell. You killed brothers of the Night's Watch, you've killed free folk. You killed a man you admired and held the woman you loved in your arms as she died. You fought, and you lost. Now it's time rest," Naruto said as a white light appeared behind him, blinding Jon. The intensity seemed to die down and he could make out 5 figures in the light. "They're waiting for you. Jon, your parents, Ned, Robb, and Ygritte. Go be with them." Jon considered refusing, but honestly, he was tired of fighting. Naruto made a fair point. He had done nothing but fight since he left and he was utterly miserable, and Naruto had been fighting this battle for a long time. He just hoped he was making the right choice. Don't let them win. Protect what remains of House Stark, and the realm, Jon pleaded. I will, Naruto said. With that, Jon walked into the light, and left this world to reunite with his family in the afterlife. The light vanished and Naruto was all that was left. Now, time to take my new body, Naruto said, making the eyes of the face on Heart Tree in front of Jon's pyre glow purple so he could explain it away as divine intervention. Naruto felt his skin warm, his heart begin to beat again, and as his sight was taken by darkness for a moment, he opened eyes to see the flames enveloping him. He was alive again. The Night's King, the Boltons, the Freys, the Ironborn, the Lannisters, he would bring fire and blood to all of them, restore the Targaryen to their rightful place as the kings of Westeros and save the world. Naruto slowly sat up while his body was still inside the hot flames. He looked around and even through the flames, he could see the expressions of disbelief on everybody's faces. He held up his left hand, turning it around to have the palm face outward, then turning his hand back inward to his face. He clenched his hand into a fist, and as he attempted to get up, he stumbled. Apparently, this body's legs were weak from disuse. He was caught by one of the free folk, a beautiful blonde warrior named Val. Easy there, Snow, she said. She offered Naruto his cloak, to which he accepted. Thank you, Val, Naruto said gratefully. Melisandre approached the two men and knelt before Naruto. Afterwards, after they stabbed you, after you died, where did you go? What did you see? Naruto paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts before speaking. I saw the past. I saw my origins, the answers to the questions that have plagued me my entire life. Naruto looked at Melisandre and spoke. It seems I have you to thank for my resurrection. The Red Woman shook her head and said, the Lord of Light could not bring you back on his own. I believe that his power, combined with the power of your old gods, allowed you to come back, my lord. Naruto was starting to get cold while he said, help me inside. I'd rather not die again from freezing to death. Esser Davos and Melisandre helped him inside. Everyone else followed suit. Naruto sat down after putting a pair of black breeches, black boots, and a black leather jerkin on, sat down in a chair. Esser Davos looked uncomfortable for a moment before saying, so, I don't really know how to tell you this, but, Davos started, but Naruto interrupted him. If it's about my Targaryen looks, then it's okay, Esser Davos, Naruto said, looking at Esser Davos. I already know. But how? He asked. Like I told you out there, I saw the past. I saw my mother Lyanna and my father Rhaegar marry in the God's Eye with Elia and little Rhaenys watching. I saw them expressing their love for me. I saw my dying mother give me to Uncle Ned, and I saw that same uncle claim me as a bastard. I know I was only dead for maybe 24 hours, but for me, in the presence of the old gods and Azor Ahai, it was a lot longer. There was a great deal of time to accept who I am while I was dead. Davos Seaworth. I have come to accept that. I know the danger that's out there, and I know that I can do a lot more to stop it in the south than I can here. And look, Naruto took a moment to collect his thoughts before continuing. I know you don't really owe me anything and you only just learned of Stannis' death, but you risked your life to protect my dead body while Alisar would have turned my body to ash, and Lady Melisandre helped bring me back to life. I owe you both a life debt, and if you would serve me as loyally as you served Stannis, I swear to you, I will repay this debt. Davos couldn't really answer and Melisandre didn't say anything, though her expression told the other two occupants of the room that she hadn't been expecting the offer. Neither of you has to decide now, just know that the offer's open, Naruto said. Now then, I did just come back from the dead. If you could please, I would like a few hours to myself to rest. Davos and Melisandre exited the room. Naruto locked the door and cut his hand with a knife, drawing blood, and it dripped onto the floor. He then took his fingers and began to draw it into a symbol, Devil's Trap from Supernatural. He then pointed his finger at the blood that made the sigil ignited in fire, but it did not produce smoke. Naruto then knelt on both knees, placed his hands on his thighs and closed his eyes while he chanted, Qui vocat tenebrae soror mea, 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 qui vocat tenebrae soror mea. The flames spurted for a moment and a sword handle could be seen protruding from the flames. The pommel was a blood-red studded bevel. On each side of the bevel was the black three-headed dragon of House Blackfire. The grip of the sword was made of pitch-black leather and blood-red metal cord was wrapped around it several times. The blood-red crossguard bent towards the blade some. Naruto got up and gripped the handle of the blade and pulled it out of the flames. Along the half of the blade that is close to the crossguard, blood-red letters in the language of High Valyrian are engraved on a black setting on each side. The words say, Fire and Blood. This was Dark Sister. It's been too long, old friend. Naruto said happily as he felt the familiar weight of his old sword. Castle Black. Courtyard. Naruto was staring at the crowd gathered in the courtyard. He slowly walked down and through the crowd till he stopped at Tormund. They think you're some kind of god. Ya no. The redhead member of the Free Folk said, the man who returned from the dead. I am no god, Naruto said, cracking a small smile, just one lucky son of a bitch. I know that, Tormund said as he walked closer to Naruto and whispered in his ear. I saw your pecker. What kind of god has a pecker that small? They both share a chuckle and share a brotherly embrace before Naruto moved on to Ed. You don't look the same, that's still you in there? Ed asked. I think so, hold off on burning my body for now, Naruto japed, which brought a laugh from Ed. That's funny, you sure that's still you in there? He japed, causing both men to laugh. Winterfell. A small band of riders, led by Small John Umber, rode towards Winterfell at pace, ignoring their disgust for the flayed men that littered the road on the way to the castle. Ramsay Bolton and Harold Karstark welcomed the Umber Lord in the Great Hall of Winterfell. Ramsay was considering why the Umber was here. The Umbers are a famously loyal house, Ramsay began. Famously loyal to the Starks, Harold Karstark said from beside Ramsay, pouring himself a drink. And you, Lord Karstark? A few years ago, I sat around a campfire with your brother Torrin, marching in Robb Stark's army. Your people share blood with the Starks, don't they? But here we are, times change, Lord Small John Umber countered. So quickly though? Ramsay asked. I heard your father was given back to you. My father was left malnourished from being held captive in the Twins. When he finally was sent back to Last Hearth, he caught a fever and died because he had withered away in the Frey's fucking dungeon, Small John Umber stated. Maybe so, Ramsay said, but when my father became Warden of the North by royal decree, your house still refused to pledge their banners. Your father was a cunt, the Small John stated bluntly and smirking at the same time. My beloved father, the Warden, Ramsay began, doing his best to ignore the anger inside him at that statement. Your father was a cunt and that's why you killed him. I might have done the same to my father if he hadn't have done me the favor of dying on his own, Small John admitted. My father was poisoned by our enemies, Ramsay tried correcting him. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Small John said without a care, knowing bullshit when he heard it. Why have you come to Winterfell, Lord Umber? Ramsay asked him. Ned Stark's bastard. Jon Snow led an army of 35,000 wildlings past the wall. I am farther north than any of you fuckers. Wildlings come down. We always have to fight them first. I like fighting wildlings, been doing it all me life. But there are far too many of them for us to beat back alone this time, Small John told Ramsay. So now you've come seeking help. We need to help each other, Small John told him. The colder it gets, the farther south those goat fuckers will roam. Won't take them long to get here. You think a horde of wildlings can take Winterfell? Karstark mocked.
If they get Jon Snow leading them, that's exactly what will happen. He knows this place better than we ever will. Besides, there are still houses loyal to the Starks, houses that still plot against the Boltons and are itching for an opportunity to pay you back for all the flaying you've done in your father's betrayal of Robb Stark. 1. If Jon Snow marches his massive army this way and they join up with him, you'll be outnumbered more than 7-1, Small John said, worrying Ramsay slightly.
Pledge your banners to House Bolton. Swear loyalty to me as Warden of the North, and after we deal with the Stark loyalists, we will fight together to destroy the bastard and all his wildling friends, Ramsay offered. I am not kissing your fucking hand, Small John told Ramsay bluntly. Traditionally a bannerman kneels before his lord, Ramsay said. I am not doing that either. Why would I trust a man who won't honor tradition? Ramsay said, annoyed. Your father honored tradition, knelt for Robb Stark, called him King of the North, Small John reminded Ramsay. Was Robb Stark right to trust your father? Then it appears we're at a bit of an impasse, Ramsay told the giant of a man. Fuck kneeling and fuck oaths, Small John said, nailing home his point. I've got a gift for you, he nodded to his two men. A girl, I hope. I prefer redheads, Ramsay joked as two hooded figures were dragged into the hall. A girl, Small John laughed, a wild one. He pulled the hood off to reveal a brown-haired woman, frantically looking around. I like them wild, Ramsay said, standing up interested. And the boy, nice and young, the way Karstark likes them, Small John mocked, causing Harold Karstark to push his chair back and stand in anger. Small John ignored him, pulling off the hood to reveal a curly-haired child with brown hair and green eyes. Who's this? Ramsay asked, confused at what he was being given. Rickon Stark, Small John told him. Ramsay walked up to the boy. I've never met the kid in my life. How'd I know if that's Rickon Stark? Small John walked over to another bag, and pulled something out of it. Walking back towards Ramsay, he threw the sawn-off head of an almost black direwolf. Ramsay looked at the reaction of the boy, and saw his sheer anger. "Welcome home, Lord Stark," the Bolton bastard smiled. Later that day, the Small John was walking towards one of his guards. "You," he called, beckoning him over. "My lord?" The guard asked. "Get word to Greywater Watch, Bear Island, Last Hearth, and White Harbor. Tell them, we're in, too." Castle Black Lord Commander's chamber. Naruto was standing in front of the section of wall that housed his secret stash of stuff. He bit his thumb to draw blood and wiped his finger across the wall, causing the illusionary wall to disappear. Inside this compartment was several items. These items were Blackfire, the Valyrian steel crown of the Aegon the Conqueror, a suit of Valyrian steel armor, an. Think Daedric armor from Skyrim for appearance, and a chest. This chest had 4 dragon eggs. One egg was snow white. Another was blood red with black swirl patterns. Another had pure gold scales, and the final one was pitch black with spiraling dark blue markings. Blackfire was a 2-handed great sword made of Valyrian steel. The blade was roughly the same size as House Tarly's Heartsbane. The hilt and guard were pitch black and have a scaly appearance, like the scales of a snake or dragon. The hilt and guard were straight and cylindrical like a neck. At the each end of the guard and at the pommel was a small black dragon head with blood red rubies in the eye sockets of each. In the middle of the guard rests a perfectly round blood red ruby. Naruto tested Blackfire in his hands and gave a few practice swings and went through a few stances. Blackfire felt just as natural in his hands as Dark Sister, as if his hands were fashioned for the very purpose of wielding both blades. It also helped his case that Blackfire, due to being wielded by every Targaryen ruler until Daeron II Targaryen, was sometimes called the Sword of Kings. It made one's claim more legitimate, which was partially why Demon Blackfire had so much support during the first Blackfire Rebellion. In the eyes of the ones who supported him, his claim was more legitimate than Daeron's. The same was true of the Conqueror's crown, which was considered to be the crown of kings and added even more legitimacy to a claim. Ed came in and told him, "It's time, before you bring them out. I need to place something in the pyre." Ed nodded and left. Naruto went outside to place the eggs in the middle of the pyre and waited patiently before the traitors came out. Castle Black Courtyard. The 12 conspirators were all gathered up. They were going to be burned alive and were tied to their posts in circle around the center, where the dragon eggs lay. Naruto, with his hood up, walked near the pyre and turned away from them to begin speaking. "If you have any last words, speak them now or hold your peace," Naruto said without turning around. "You should NT be alive, it ain't right," Bowen Marsh said. "Neither was murdering me," Naruto said coldly. "My mother's still living at White Harbor. Could you write her? Tell her I died fighting the Wildings," Othel Yarwick said. "I am not going to lie to her. She'll know you betrayed me," Naruto said coldly. He moved on to Thorn. "I had a choice, Lord Commander, betray you or betray the Night's Watch. You brought an army of wildlings into our lands, an army of murderers and raiders. If I had to do it all over knowing where I'd end up, I pray I'd make the right choice again. Betraying your Lord Commander is the same as betraying the Night's Watch, Alice or Thorn," Naruto said, still not turning around. "Not according to me. I fought, I lost, now I rest. But you, Lord Snow, you'll be fighting their battles forever." Alistair finished, his piece done, but Naruto wasn't. "Tell me, Thorn, you served House Targaryen during Robert's rebellion, did you not?" Naruto asked. "Of course, I did," Alistair said tiredly, just wanting to get this over with and die. "And you would, of course, lay down your life if one asked you to, yes?" Naruto asked. "What the hell does this have to do with anything, bastard?" Alistair asked. Naruto slowly turned around to face Alistair. "So tell me, Thorn," Naruto's hands gripped his hood, "how does it feel to know that you killed the last true Targaryen?" Naruto asked as he threw his hood off, shocking the conspirators, as it was still Naruto's old face, but with silver blonde hair so pale it looked white, black sclera, and vibrant purple eyes. 3. The calm facade that Alistair had broke upon seeing Naruto's true appearance, Alistair struggled to breathe to as he tried to overcome his shock. "No, no, 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 no." Alistair cried out as he struggled to break out of his confines as if to kiss Naruto's boots and beg for forgiveness. "You're lying. It's a lie. It can't be true. It can't be." "But it is," Naruto said with a coldness in his voice that could have frozen Dorne. "My true name is Naruto Targaryen, legitimate son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, rightful king of Westeros, and you murdered me. Granted, I didn't know my true origins yet, but still, I still would have done the same things I did as Jon Snow." "No, my king, please forgive me, I didn't know. If I did Alistair was interrupted by Naruto. Oh, so now you're sorry. Before, you were so eager to kill me when the world thought I was Ned Stark's natural-born son, but now that you know, you want to kiss my boots and beg for forgiveness? I don't think so, Naruto coldly snapped. You will all be burned to death. I spared Mance Rayder the pain of burning to death because it is a terrible way to leave this life. The way your blood boils, the way the skin chars and flakes and your bones turn to ash, it's quite disturbing to be honest, but you are all traitors, nearly damning humanity in the process, so you deserve to die this way. Do you know why the Targaryen words are fire and blood, anybody? Nobody knows. No matter, see, the phrase isn't just a warning of what will happen to those who cross us. It's also a guide to birthing dragons. See, all you need is a living person. Burn them to death with the dragon egg in the pyre, and boom, you've got dragons. The conspirators then finally notice the dragon eggs in the center of the pyre. Worry not, Sir Alisar. I am still a somewhat merciful king. You will serve House Targaryen one final time. With your death, and the deaths of the other 11 conspirators, I shall bring another set of dragons into this world, and bring fire and death to all my enemies. With that, Naruto threw the torch onto the pyre and watched in as they all began to burn. The others surrounded noticed that Naruto had been right. The way their flesh charred was horrific, not to mention the blood-curdling screams. Naruto took off his cloak and jerkin, then the rest of his clothes and proceeded to walk into the flame. John, stop. What are you doing? Ed yelled at his best friend, but he couldn't go after him, or Ed would surely burn to death. Once the fire died down, only ash and soot remained, but Naruto stood in the middle, kneeling. He was covered with soot, but otherwise, he was okay. It was 4 creatures that were crawling all over him that shocked everyone. Naruto had hatched 4 dragons. One had blood-red scales with black swirls, another had scales as white as snow, a third had reddish-gold scales, and the final one was pitch black with spiraling dark blue markings. Yet unlike when Daenerys hatched her dragons, these dragons were already the size that Daenerys' dragons were when she captured Yunkai. Naruto proceeded to put his clothes back on, yet as the newborn dragons flew around him, he handed the Lord Commander's cloak to Ed. What do you want me to do with this? Ed asked, as Naruto took off the cloak of the Lord Commander and gave it to Ed. Wear it, burn it, do whatever you want with it, you're Lord Commander now, Naruto said as he walked away, leaving Ed shocked. My watch is over, Naruto said, as he walked down the stairs and through the group of men, with his dragons following close behind him. Thanks for watching.